There. Thanks for stopping by for a quick listen to the Music on the Open Road podcast series, the podcast with the focus upon protection of Human Right 27 in American music. My name is Corinne Sullivan. And back in 2019, I launched Article 27 Music, which is also known as the Article 27 Music Rights Project. And then more recently, we have been operating as a nonprofit called Human Right 27 for songwriters, musicians, and performers. And I want to welcome you to the very first episode in this series, going out today, 29 April 2023. The title is Born to Be, named after the title of the 1968 album by songwriting superstar of the 1960s and 70s platinum recording artist Melanie Safka. In her career, Melanie wrote and recorded so far more than 20 hit songs. Her biggest was the upbeat Brand New Key, which was a #1 hit internationally and remained as a top 40 hit in various countries between 1971 and 1974. Melanie has written and released 246 songs on more than 50 albums throughout her career. And until 2010, all of her music was produced primarily by Peter Schekeryk. And since his passing in 2010, her music has been produced by her son, the very talented Jared Schekeryk. In this episode, we will unmask the details surrounding the launch of Melanie's career back in 1968. And I'm presenting this information in light of Melanie owning today the bulk of her musical recordings, as well as her copyrights and writer's share of her publishing, but yet receives nothing when her personal recordings, paid for in the studio and handled by her producer husband, Peter Schekeryk, when those recordings are used in television programs and in movies and in various ways to reach audiences internationally and across the United States. Tonight, we talk about how did Melanie go from meeting Peter Schekeryk, who was her lifelong manager, producer, and business partner, to becoming a star, which eventually led to her releasing a lot of great music, hit music, and performing in incredible settings, festivals, venues, and owning her recordings in the 70s. Melanie also attributed Peter as the source of her success, primarily in the business aspect of music. And we'll dig into the story of why, as told by Melanie herself. So Melanie will be speaking on this podcast, and that is from voice recordings that we made while we were working together on a book and sort of culling the universe to find out why payments were being made against the use of her recordings and her writing, her songwriting, and her music and melodies that was being sent to other parties that she had never agreed to. Namely, 4 major companies in the music industry have been receiving these payments, and none of which Melanie ever herself made a deal with personally. I will play also a couple of songs written and performed by Melanie and recorded and produced by Peter. The first is actually a real treat to have and be able to present on this podcast. It is a never before released studio version of Melanie's song haven't acted. Only the concert version of this song has ever been released. This recording was preserved from a collection of 2-inch audio tapes that had been left alone, basically decaying in a barn. And the story of how these recordings were somehow picked up and cleaned in a laboratory and then transferred is the subject of another episode in this series called the Article 27 Music Rights Project, where I'll share the full story of how this company was put together and how we were working with these original recordings. And the second song that I will play on this podcast will be at the very end. And I am so excited about being able to press play on this for you. I don't even know how to express how happy I am. This is a never before officially released version of Melanie's biggest hit, Brand New Key. And it's a variation that was created by Melanie with Peter in the studio and recorded in the 1970s. And it's just a wonderful variation of her biggest selling hit single, Brand New Key. So I'll play that at the end of this podcast, this episode 1, Born to Be. Before delving into the incredible beginnings of Melanie's iconic history in mainstream music, which led to the launch of her own recording company called Neighborhood Records, I would like to present this entire podcast series to you in the correct light. There are people in music who seem to be tumbling inside painted waterfalls, swimming in suggestive currents, drowning inside oceans of flaky reassurances, flat out lies, actually, so that now the songwriter is blandly considered within music modernization acts held in Parliament, just another part of the recording industry rather than the very bones and heartbeat of the industry itself. That's the way the music industry goes. It's said too often. The industry needn't be shady, must it? Music on the open road is inspired by many, many songwriters, musicians, and performers, great artists in music who, over the past 100+ years or so, since the dawn of recorded music and the sales of dem recordings, spoke out in song, with vampires and monsters emerging to give them hell. So many wonderful people in music are yet ever hope-filled. They continue to perform and bring joy to millions. This podcast series is dedicated to you, music maker. No matter whoever you may be now, no matter what and wherever you might still be trying to reach your audiences with all your heart, they are still there. Your audiences are still yours, and they are ever in love with you. Music on the Open Road is about freedom for you. It's based upon my learnings as both a raunchy human rights advocate since my teenage years, and as well as the founder of Article 27 Music, which I started at home in Oregon in 2019 when I turned 40 years old. Article 27 Music is centered upon education of the human rights aspect of copyright protection for songwriters, musicians, and performers. It is a human right. This podcast series was born because, in the end, if anything brings happiness for everyone in the land, it's music. There is this terrific need to protect music, to protect human rights in the music industry, as well as the freedom of speech. That is at stake too, and we will talk about that. Hoping this series brings into discussion all the things that can happen inside politics and business dealings and recording studios, radio stations, all these places where we can resolve the problems in music but outside of the courtrooms for the first time, because let's face it, the one profession guaranteed in the current system to be getting paid regularly, monthly, are the entertainment lawyers. It should not be that way. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an American. Every American has a right to protect the American legacy. That has everything to do with protecting freedom of speech. I actually believe that it's up to us, the fans and the lovers of music, to do something to help the real gems of music. The United Nations was formed following the closing of World War II. At that time, there was a focus on the rights of all people of the world. That must have been the first time that happened on such a big scale, but it was because eyes had sort of been ripped open with the atrocities that were discovered at the Nazi death camps. These were revealed. How could such a thing happen? And you really have to ask yourself that today in 2023, because Germany was a remarkably advanced country on every front. Yet, genocide was their best solution to the problems that emerge when people try to get along with each other. That was their best take on how to solve problems. But in America, we have a precious commodity, the spirit of freedom and equality the nation was built upon, equal treatment for one and all as far as the government and as far as government agencies are concerned. That is our freedom. A lot of countries do not. So it starts to play out that when the death camps ended, there was this sort of slow and cocky takeover of the United States think tanks and radio and publicity stunts. A lot of crap was put into our systems during that time period, into our systems of thinking, and that is documented from those types of people who are willing to set up death camps to handle their political problems. And some of that has been pushing up against human rights in the American music industry and freedom of speech for artists. It's really not wanted on our radio waves by a particular classification of personality. So that's what we are really, truly up against, music lover. That's what's behind the curtain, Dorothy. When I see great songwriters and singers go to drugs or violence or suicide, I am searching for the people who are pushing them into those positions, putting those things into those people's lives. Because let's be really, really real, people. Music is so fun. Music is so fun. The type of person who writes a song, goes on stage and performs, is a really fun type of person. The higher in spirit they are, the more they bring the audience across every imaginable emotional state to leave them feeling naturally buzzed. To me, it's unnatural that an artist would be bent on self-demise. That is wacky. But persons close to them, benefiting from being able to control them, could get a constant stream of bad news feeding to them. So they sort of can never feel satisfied with all of their remarkable achievements. Worse, lies about illegal situations that are probably made to sound much worse than they truly ever were are used to blackmail the artist. And then even a step worse than that, getting the artist to believe they're crazy or getting their family to sign them into a psychiatric clinic where they're drugged, electroshock therapied. These things are horrible. And they are basically used to tell important individuals in law or people that can pull the purse strings, people that they want to impress, that the artists themselves are a crazy mess because they're an artist. All of that is crap, but it is used to dominate the music maker more often than you would believe. It's really that sinister, even though the thought is like terrifying. Music can always bring us up. Even when it's sad or angry, music can heal. Music that is truly awful usually has some sort of hidden agenda, and the listener feels it and turns it off. But when it's really great, it takes us through our highs, our lows, plus a million places in the mind. Even if the music is depressing, menacing, antagonistic, it can be enjoyable. And that is what is so incredible. There are many things happening. Right now, it's like there are all these situations we face in the United States that seem like they can't be solved. Money prevents equal education for a huge portion of the kids in the United States. And then they get told they're crazy. And then they get advised to take drugs when they are now desperate because they've been told they're crazy. It leads a heavy amount of kids to violence and to drug addiction. There are things happening around the world, such as mass suicide, war, euthanasia. Even accidents on the roads and constant arguing on the news are really hard to take. It's rough right now for planet Earth. These constant attacks and threats of danger are putting chaos and havoc into the minds of people. People are worrying all the time about not being able to find the right job, not being able to protect families from danger. There's always a war a brewing that we're being told about, or some other terrible thing that we're getting, photos and interviews sent directly to us on our phones. Music is personal. It's intuitive. It usually happens that music travels on many wavelengths all at the same time, so that many takes come from different people listening to the same piece.
Like a lady, since my mother told me that I should sit with my knees together. I think I've been duped. Have I been you? Get me back to a street. Get me back on my knees, I need to pray. Play it soft and travel lightly. Don't give all you've got for the show. Gave it all and did it nightly. I think I've been duped. Have I been you? Get me back to a street where I can stay. Once my mother told me that I should sit with my knees together. I think I've been through it. If I've been used, get me back to a stream where I can stay. Get me back on my knees. I need to pray.
Then it was very confusing because like art, music was supposed to be free, and yet I'm in this business and it's not free, and you romanticize the poor, you romanticize people who are not doing well. They get the role of the lead. They get the lead role because it's romanticized. And what can you romanticize? The person who's doing well and they're happy. I mean, it's much more beautiful if they're suffering and they're suicidal and the husband, boyfriend leaves them or cheats on them and they have all this angst and suffering, you know. It's so much easier to identify and feel for those people because it's romantic. It is romantic. Being poor is romantic. Not in real life, but it's romantic. And artists are suckers for romance. So it was a very weird time because there was this, there was who I am, a careful person. You know, I don't want to hurt myself. I'm not brave enough to hurt myself. You know, and it felt like more like a fault than it felt like a virtue. You know, nobody was saying it's virtuous to survive.
Obviously, you and Peter had this really tight camaraderie regarding your career, but still the way that you talk, you are very like on your own. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. He was always trying to understand what the fuck I was talking about. Because to him, you know, doing well and making a lot of money and having a lot of success, and if other people were jealous, that was their problem. But yeah, I wasn't living in that. He was. I was just, we had a very strange relationship. I mean, as far as like getting one another. But he was absolutely interested in everything I said. I mean, he never patronized me. I mean, I would never stood for it. You know, he was listening, you know. But somewhere in there, he didn't get it. But he got, there was something he knew was important.
And so did you feel like really supported by him, and that's what you liked?
I did, definitely. But I knew that when I didn't want to go along with certain, like with Clive Davis and all that, he knew that there was no winning that one. You know, it wasn't like, okay, I'll just do whatever he says, you know, or we'll have a wedding in Central Park with Neil Bogart, or, you know, I never did those things. I just couldn't, you know. We went to a Justice of the Peace in Yonkers. We went to cousin Brucey's New Year's Eve party, and he announced that we had gotten married, and it was like our anniversary party.
Aww.
I mean, our wedding party.
Aww.
Melanie and Peter got married.
Oh.
I was wearing I loved this little suit. It was cut, you know, really narrow at the waist and went out like that and had little buttons down the middle.
Oh.
And I had a really tiny waist, you know, so it I just felt so spiffy in it. It had a black skirt, knee, right above the knee, and boots, and I felt really good.
What color were your boots?
Black.
Oh, so black boots and a black suit.
Black, everything black.
Was that because of your name?
I didn't think about the name, but I thought about a Chekhov play where the lead, or one of the girls in the Chekhov play says, they ask, why are you always wearing black? Because I'm in mourning for my life. I'm not sure if that was the name of that play, but he did write a play called Uncle Vanya. Why would you get married in black? Yes, I am in mourning for my life.
Melanie met Peter when she was looking for an audition at the Brill Building. She had recently graduated from an acting academy in New York City, along with her contemporary, Danny DeVito. They were in plays together there. She wanted to become a professional actress. That's what her heart was set on. And on accident, she walked into the wrong room at the Brill Building and met superstar songwriting duo and music production team Hugo and Luigi, who asked her to audition for them. She was standing there with her guitar on her back, and they ended up inviting Peter Schekeryk in to listen to her songs, and that is how the story starts.
Oh, I was an actress, you know. I was definitely, now I'm an actress, and I'm going to get an acting thing. That's why maybe I should go to, method acting school and, investigate other method actors and what they do. And
But would you have responded to people's requests for you to perform if you hadn't met Peter and you had pursued acting? Do you still think you would have fallen into these big showcases and festivals just by virtue of the fact that you're a great performer?
No, I don't think so. I was going for acting auditions, and I was very particular about which ones I would go to. I don't know how many I would go to before, I met some gorgeous guy and got married, and probably would have been a singer in the house. I don't think I had the drive to, pursue a career. It's just, I was questing for what I should do. And really, archaeology and anthropology were pottery, making pots and creating things, but not so to be famous, but to create things and express yourself. And but I always wrote songs. The idea of being a singer didn't seem possible. First of all, I didn't look like a singer. Really, then singers looked a certain way.
A persona that you would have to match in order to be taken as like the real deal.
Right, yeah. Like writers were writers and singers were singers until Bob Dylan. And that's why they called me the female Bob Dylan when I first started, because I sang and I wrote the song. Whereas usually it was just somebody wrote the song. The singer, was the gorgeous girl in the sexy dress or something, or the handsome guy, gyrating or something. But so I really didn't. I knew I wasn't someone who was going to get up there and dance. I never even thought that would be a slight possibility. So I kind of didn't think of myself as a person who could be a singer. It was when Hugo and Luigi said, "Come and audition." Okay. I don't know what that is, but And I sat there, on my little chair between the two desks, and they were facing each other. And Hugo, Luigi, no, maybe it was the opposite. I think Luigi, Hugo. And these were very, very expensive desks. I mean, these desks were like, gilded, wooden, carved desks. They were facing each other, Luigi, and they're looking at each other, right? And I'm sitting here seeing Hugo, Luigi, and I'm singing the song, and I can see them looking at each other, and I'm, they're like kind of like, I don't know, that look, like, I don't. It's really weird, kind of look. And I'm singing, I thought, they don't think I'm so good. So, so then I'll do another one. These are songs I wrote. These are publishers. So they're listening to a song in a way that, they're not used to a girl's voice sounding like my voice. And so they know something's interesting, but then they're like, well, we're doing a Broadway show, and we just wrote Elvis's last hit. And I said, wow, that's amazing. And they're doing the Broadway show, so they can't do any productions now. And they just hired Peter Schekeryk, and he'll be in on Thursday, and you come and sing some songs for him.
Wow.
And that's when I met Peter.
Wow.
That was, like, he was absolutely floored. It was like, he ran out of the office in the middle of me singing a song. And I thought, what did I do? And I heard him talking. We've got to sign her. She's great. And then he came back and said, sing another one. And I'm
This
singing.
is Peter?
Yeah.
With Hugo and Luigi
With there? Hugo and Luigi. No, they're in their room.
Oh, okay.
He ran out of his office, ran to their room, and said, she's great. We'll go there. And that's when they said, I'm not sure when they said this. I think later on he told me, they said, she sounds like she's singing underwater. That's what they said. She sounds like she's singing underwater. So, but they thought, it had possibilities. But it's not like they thought, wow, this is the next Barbara Streisand, It was more like something a little too interesting to let it go,
That's a lot. It's amazing what you guys got done. I mean, truly amazing.
Yeah.
Truly amazing.
But his whole focus was constantly recording me and everything I ever wrote and everything I ever did, And
that's really amazing. Music on the Open Road podcast series is devoted to three things. I want to shine some truth on the suffering that is occurring in Melanie's life right now, and hopefully give enough factual information to show that what she has claimed over the last decade, actually the last 2 decades, is true. I want to provide information about human rights in the music industry and what can be done by understanding the recent Music Modernization Act. And finally, I would like to talk about freedom of speech and protecting it throughout the music industry for the men and the women and the youth who go up on the stage to make people feel better. Such an important thing to do in the face of a world that is so prone to hatred and fighting. Fortunately, amongst all the haters, there are artists who want to bring the people into working relationships with one another, and they do that through their crafts in different ways, in different cultures. That has to be respected, and today, it has to be protected. The heartbreaking true story of Melanie Safka and her husband Peter Schekeryk should be told. When she stepped onto the stage in the late 60s, she performed songs that she had written on her own. Met Peter, fell in love. Peter himself was an artist, a music producer. Together, they made a pact. They would look out for one another in the industry at all costs. She did not want to sell out at all, compromise her own integrity. Peter swore, promised, he would never let her music go out of her control. And he assumed a position of command and control in all the business dealings with some of the biggest names in music history. To the point of Melanie and Peter winning one of the most important court cases in the history of modern music, one which gave all of her works back to her from Buddha Records, also known as Kama Ripa Records, upon fulfillment of her contractual obligations to Buddha. This is a presentation of that life's work. Melanie is alive today. Peter, unfortunately, is not. I never had the chance to talk to him, and I really wish I could have, because Peter Schekeryk was incredible. He's underplayed for the role he played in bringing music under the control of the artists themselves, which is what he was able to do for Melanie. He was a champion in music who never had a chance to tell his story. And to help her launch America's first mainstream independent record label to rival the major labels, Neighborhood Records.
He came to visit. He was like totally from New York, from the Ukraine to New York. So he came to visit me in Long Branch the first time. He was going to meet my mother, not my father. My father wasn't home very much. And I was going to cook dinner. And I was going to make lemon chicken. And he always remembered that I made lemon chicken, like the best thing he ever ate. I don't even remember what kind of lemon chicken I made, but I must have broiled chicken and probably oregano and stuff. Like kind of like the Greek chicken, So he came and he had to take a bus from New York to Long Branch. He didn't have a car.
Okay.
Well, lived in New York, so it was really people didn't have cars, in New York. It was like, why? You can't drive anyway. So public transportation and taxis.
Oh, okay, taxis, subways, and buses.
Buses, taxis, and subway.
Buses, taxis, and subways. Okay.
So we at first, he was coming for the first time down to New Jersey, and I don't remember how long we had been kind of seeing each other, but I know he never saw my apartment when I lived with the girls and I was going to acting school. I had already left that apartment. So after that apartment, I moved back home, so I wasn't going into the city except to like an audition, or that's how I met Peter, through that acting audition. So he came to visit, and I was waiting, and it's no cell phones, right? We're just like waiting and waiting, and my mother's waiting and waiting. And the dinner was cooked, and we're waiting and waiting. And he finally calls and said, "I'm trying to hail a cab, and they won't stop." I said, "Oh, you don't hail a cab here. You have to actually call a cab." And I said, "My mother will come and get you." Uh-huh. So she went and picked him up, and I told her what he looked like, and he was like running up and down the street, she said. And he got in the car, and they brought him to the house, and we ate dinner. My famous lemon chicken. In Long Branch, New Jersey, you don't hail a cab.
So
like in New York, you just like put your hand up. Taxi knows you want them. In Long Branch, New Jersey, somebody holds their hand up and they think you're waving hello. So So we got him because we knew what bus he was coming in on.
Right.
So that's why we were wondering,
Right.
But of course, again, no cell phone. It was like, hey, where are you? It was a lot more complicated to reach someone, but that was nice. Anyway, so he came over and, we had a very nice night, and then he had to stay over. We had a finished basement. I don't think there was a bathroom down there. There might have been. I can't remember if there was, but anyway, we had a finished basement with if somebody needed to stay over, and there was. So he stayed over, and then he went back the next day to New York, and then little by little he kept coming down, and little by little he moved in. I don't remember, if there was a formal invitation. I don't think so. I think it just kind of one of those things that was okay with everybody, and it happened. But I lived in the upstairs bedroom. He never even saw my bedroom. It was this whole different time.
Born to Be was the first album recorded by Melanie. She was working closely with Peter. At the label, he was her management representation, and in the studio, he acted as her producer. It was released by the Buddha Records music label in New York City. It presented 7 of Melanie's original songs. Amazing music. And I would guess she wrote these before she met anyone in the music industry, but I have not yet asked her about it. The Born to Be cover artwork, wow, really represents Melanie's personal attention to artistic detail, which is present throughout her entire career. Artwork and details she selected brings Melanie to life. Born to Be has an original piece on its cover by an artist named Moselle Wilmot Thompson Jr., an incredibly loved and respected African-American illustrator. Moselle's work is featured on many albums of this time period, such as the Boston Pops, Pierre Summers and His Orchestra, Del Wood, Gershwin. Moselle's work was requested and commissioned as the cover artwork for Born to Be. The piece is inspired by Melanie and her voice. Born to Be was recorded and produced by Peter Schekeryk. Roger Kellaway, as the arranger, was hired by Artie Ripp of Buddha Records. In 1968, December, Born to Be was ready for pressing and distribution. Melanie was on her way to Paris, along with Peter, but before they could leave, the label requested that they tie the knot, and so they were married on the last day of 1968. The newlyweds then attended the New Year's Eve party of radio DJ Cousin Brucey, who turned the whole party into the couple's wedding reception. Melanie and Peter immediately flew to Paris, where she held a 40-show engagement at the Theatre Olympia as part of a showcase that culminated each evening with a performance by France's biggest star, Monsieur 100,000 Volts, Gilbert Bécaud. During the trip to Paris, she wrote, recorded, and released Bobo's Party. It was a #1 hit in France, instantly. After that, Melanie and Peter moved to England, where Melanie was hired to score a major motion picture entitled RPM. And then, Melanie took a trip back to New York City in August 1969 to drive to upstate New York to perform on Friday night at the world's most remembered gathering of music, peace, and love, 1969 Woodstock.
We had already organized Woodstock before we left. And it was, again, some of the organizers, it wasn't just Michael Lang. There was Phil Steinberg and Artie Kornfeld and these investors and stuff, and they were there, and that's how I got into Woodstock. But again, nobody knew anything about how huge this was going to be. This was just a festival. They called it the Aquarian Exposition. It wasn't called Woodstock. It was just supposed to be in Woodstock, but that didn't happen, and it went to Bethel.
you kind of took the bull by the horns on getting into Woodstock. Like you went up to it must have been one of those people you just mentioned and told them that you wanted to be in the festival?
No. It was Peter who got me into the festival. I wasn't there, but it was, it was sort of like, oh yeah, she should be there. That would be great. It wasn't corporate, you know what I'm saying? It was just a bunch of guys deciding who they could get. They were trying to get big deal people, and they got the Incredible String Band, and then little by little, they got some more people.
When did you find out that you were going to do Woodstock?
Like a year before. And then I went to England and really forgot about it because I was working on a film score and I was meeting people. And we thought we were going to live in England.
That must have been really exciting at that time period.
It was. We lived in Chelsea, in the real cool part of London, in Chelsea. It was like, there was a place called the Chelsea Drugstore, which wasn't really a drugstore. It was I don't know what that was. It was like, you go in, there were places to eat. It was a place to eat, and then there were, you could have coffee or drinks, and you could buy things, and there was records. And Rolling Stones had a line in one of their songs, I went down to the Chelsea drugstore to get my fair share of abuse.
In the space of 12 months, Melanie the songwriter experienced real success connecting with music lovers in Europe, Asia, the United Kingdom, Australia, in addition to her hometown, New York City, and the United States. It was supposedly spurred by Peter Schekeryk's influence. They continued to collaborate as artist and producer for the rest of Peter's life until his passing in 2010. Their joint efforts resulted in more than 50 historic albums released by Melanie. Throughout the course of time, Melanie enjoyed having more than 20 hit songs penned and performed by her. Melanie became a regular in music publications and across newspapers. She was usually billed as a folk pop artist. She was named Songwriter of the Year by Billboard at the launch of her career. She scored an Emmy for her lyrics to the TV show Beauty and the Beast in the 90s, and her music continues to be used by artists and filmmakers around the world today. Music on the Open Road podcast series is recorded wherever the music takes me across the United States. It is written by me, usually at my home headquarters in Oregon. The creators of the opening, closing, and segue piece of music that has been playing throughout this podcast are my nephew, Spencer Sullivan, recorded in Portland in 2019 with Melanie and Peter's son, Beau Jared Schekeryk, who collaborated with strings and further beat work from Nashville, Tennessee in 2022. This is the end of episode 1 of the Music on the Open Road podcast series. I hope you will stop by for a quick listen next week when we present episode 2, entitled Melanie's Neighborhood Records. Now, I am happy because I get to be the one sitting here and I get to push play for everybody out there. Truly, I hope you will enjoy this masterpiece arranged specially so you fans and music lovers and people interested in human rights in the music industry could hear it here on episode 1. This is really exciting. I present now to you the not yet officially released studio recording of Melanie and Peter's 1970s variation of Melanie's international top-selling #1 song, Brand New Key.
Is it rolling?
should get together and try now, you see. I've been looking around the world. You got something for me. Oh, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. Your mother, if you were at home, she said yes, but you weren't alone. Sometimes I think that you're avoiding me. I'm okay alone, but you got something I need. Well, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I think that we should get together and try to now, you see. La, 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 la. You got something for me. Oh, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I ride my bike, I roller skate, don't drive no car. Don't go too fast, but I go pretty far. For somebody who don't drive, I've been all around this world. Some people say I done all right for